Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Maddie B. And as predicted, the Steelers have made their decision at quarterback, and it's going to be Russell Wilson. Now,
Surprise, a friggin' surprise.
he was also named captain, which I was kind of shocked by, just because he doesn't have to be captain. And if he ends up getting demoted, does he stay captain the entire year?
Yes.
What if he pouts?
Then you have a pouting captain.
He's just like, he goes out for the coin toss, and then he's like Instagramming with his wife while the team plays on the sideline. That's
Unlimited.
That's like, I don't think he's going to finish the year. I've said that the entire time. The Justin Fields hype train is something that I don't understand. And he's had time. He hasn't won. And I get it. People want to see him play with the Steelers. Maybe it will work out. But Russell Wilson, you're going to get a consistent performer. I think his issue is his body just doesn't have it anymore. He just doesn't last the entire season. Now, I don't know what was going on with the Broncos, because I think their organization's kind of a mess. And I think you can just look at their record to kind of back that up, right? Like the Niners were dysfunctional until Harbaugh got there. And then the owner hated him because he was changing things. And then they legit just took his ideas after they got rid of him. And they're like, we're going to go back to being a player-friendly place. And then they started losing again. And they're like, nah, never mind. Let's go back to how it was with Harbaugh. And then they've been winning since. So, you can't have both, where I feel like the Broncos are trying to do... They're not as extreme as what Belichick does with the players. But I don't know if it's just John Elway hanging around and then Sean Payton coming in. I thought that was going to work out. But I just feel like there's some type of disconnect between the players and the owners and the coaches. There's nothing right there. So Russell coming to the Steelers could give him new blood. But his issues lasting the entire year started in Seattle. Had nothing to do with Denver. And I pointed it out in our fantasy talk because he was a great quarterback to have, but you had to be careful down the stretch with the playoffs. Because when the playoffs started, he wasn't going to perform. And so you had to have a backup plan. Now the Steelers, the same thing. I think this could be the first year the Steelers, have a losing record? That was the thing that they always advertised for Tomlin, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, it starts this year. I think the Friday game, my Packers are playing the Eagles. That's weird, right? I know, it's just odd that college programs were no, some of them big ones, Michigan, Ohio State, they're nah, we don't want to play on Friday. And the NFL's we do.
Well, and that's I appreciate that the college game is no, Fridays are for high school sports.
No, they don't say that. I mean, Michigan State plays Fridays all the time. It just some schools were no, for that reason. No, we know that we're big enough that we can kind of just throw our weight around and say, no, we're not playing on Friday. Ohio State was using that thing, saying no, we that's a high school day. We do not care. Big Ten, we're too big. Make the plebs play on that level. And then they're yeah, we'll do it. We'll eat it up. Illinois, Northwestern, Michigan State games on Friday. Awesome. And I don't know if they're still really doing that with the new TV contract, because I saw a lot of SEC fans complaining. What was the CBS matchup? Was it Nebraska at UNLV or something?
Well, there was one that was it was the
it was
Virginia Tech, and I was this is a great primetime matchup.
Well, no, I think it was Ohio State Akron, but then UNLV and Nebraska was the other game, and they were this is what these networks didn't sign with the SEC for, so people could watch Ohio State beat up on Akron. We could have been watching the Florida. I think they were complaining that the Florida Miami game wasn't on there because it was on ABC, but I'm you can still watch it over the air, buddy. Just because it's not on CBS, who cares? And no one wanted to watch that game anyway. Florida looked like shit. So, what's the difference? Florida getting killed, Akron getting killed. Same results. But that's what the NFL, going back, because I want to stick with the NFL first before I get to college stuff. Having the game on Friday, and then it's like in Brazil or something, so over the top and unnecessary that I think the greed's going to start getting to the NFL, where if you start having football every day, people aren't going to watch.
Well, did you see that what was coming out about the site?
No.
So apparently the NFL was like telling players, it's not safe down there. Do not leave your hotel room, because they're afraid of like players getting injured and mugged and everything else down there. So they're like a couple of guys were like, I'm telling my family not to come down for this game. Like, just stay home, because they're telling us it's not safe. Like, what makes you think, oh yeah, let's play this game here?
It's for publicity, and it's the same thing where I see like people traveling to certain countries, and it's like, why? Like friends, and they're like, yeah, would you want to go to something like that? It's like, no, I really don't. Like, what's the purpose of going there? To get a scare? I mean, you don't even have to leave the country. That guy from the 49ers got shot during a mugging. I wish the details would come out, because he had to have fought back, right? I mean, I don't know how else.
Yeah.
They said both were injured, so I'm assuming he probably didn't know he had a gun, started beating the crap out of the guy, and the guy shot him. Right? Luckily, he lived. But still, I thought, man, that's brutal. I wonder what time, because they always tell players, like, just don't be out past midnight or whatever. What was it, Dion or maybe Chris Carter? No, Chris Carter said you need to have a fall guy. One of them said, don't be out. Nothing good happens after midnight or something like that. But the players don't care, because they're out clubbing, racing around. Even they learned that in college, certain colleges, like Georgia. Right? Driving your cars down the speedway. I saw Clemson Tom got pulled over, and then someone said, yeah, you're trying to get recruited by Georgia. I see that the NFL, they want to expand, and Friday, hopefully it's not a normal thing. And it might just be the first weekend type deal. Because like college, the opening weekend, everyone loves Thursday games. When the season starts, no one really cares about Thursday games anymore. That's why it turned into like Maction. And the ratings are kind of low. And the NFL has been kind of shifting around. I hate that they had most of the preseason games on NFL Plus. But to be honest, that helped me tune them out, because I didn't care. I tune them on. I'm like, hey, do I know any of these guys? Nah. They're playing like fifth stringers. I thought they might as well just had an XFL game. Right? Like, it's pure minor league at that point. So, I don't know. But I'm worried that if they start doing Thursday, Friday, I'm always going to have college football Saturdays. So that's 3 days in a row. Sunday, Monday. That's 5 days out of the week for me. The only break you would have is Tuesday, Wednesday. I've already started to kind of tune out the Monday night game, because it's always on ESPN, and a lot of the matchups just suck. And I really don't care. If I don't have a fantasy guy in, I really don't pay attention to it. Fantasy kind of draws me in to the point where if we quit fantasy, like if people were like, yeah, we're done, and the league just ended, my watching of football would probably just plummet, NFL-wise anyway. I might watch the Steelers a bit and the Packers, and that would be it. Kind of like what I do with baseball. Do I watch the Braves? Yeah. When? Well, if it's like a game and I'm like looking for something to watch, or if it's playoffs, I'll watch. But I'm not firing up a random Braves Pirates game in May. Like, are you joking? No. Same with NBA at this point too. It's like I watch NBA and I just get annoyed with the reffing. And it's like, take a breather, buddy. Then I think, why am I watching this? I'll just watch the playoffs. Does it matter if they beat the Nets? The Celtics beat the Nets in October now. And then I was surprised. I was looking to see if the Celtics were coming down here this year, and I haven't looked recently, but I was looking like in July, and I was surprised that they didn't even have next year's schedule out yet. Because I know NHL schedules are already out, I think, maybe. But they're already kind of getting ready to start preseason. And I thought, shouldn't you have your schedule in place? I mean, kind of crazy. That's like where the NFL is like, hey, we're going to go to Brazil. And then they block Twitter. Right? Did you see that?
I don't know.
So Brazil, they didn't like people on Twitter talking about their election or something. It's illegal to have Twitter now. So they were telling NFL players like, yo, be careful. Like you might want to delete on your phone and like have all this stuff. And then they were saying the NFL could send a strong message by saying like, no, we're going to cancel this game last minute because you guys just got rid of Twitter. And that's how our players communicate. But did you think they're going to do that? Nah. No. Kind of like... Yeah. They did you see that they are going to let owners or like people outside of the owner group own NFL franchises now? 10% has to be like an actual private company or some other, but it seems like a money laundering thing, to be honest. And I thought, what a joke. Like, legit, what a joke. Because the common man is not going to be able to buy it. It's sort of like when the Broncos were up for sale and they wanted to try to put together a group like the Atlanta Braves where it was just a stock that was the group where whoever funded the group would have like primary ownership. But at a point where if they just wanted to get rid of it, they could just sell the team and they could just sell their stock, just like a normal company could. Right? That's kind of what the NFL, I'm surprised that the government that hasn't let them have all these like loopholes, that they just don't close a bunch of them and say like, nah, if you want to be half in here, you got to be all in and just become like on the stock exchange. Because then that would give more people a reason to kind of like be a fan, right? At least that's my argument too. For a lot of these teams, it's like, oh, the Celtics owner might sell. It's like, oh, maybe they'll become public. Right? You can own a piece of the Celtics. That'd be sweet. You can own a piece of the Braves right now. You could give your money to the Pirates. They're not going to invest any money back. Bob Nutting doesn't care. The team completely sucks ass. You could go ahead and pay to own a piece of the Braves, vote on whatever. I forget what it's like, the board members or whatever. Tell them no. Like I was voting on restructuring contracts or whatever the thing was this year. Like, hell no. Make them restructure their contracts. Like, you're not giving anyone a long-term deal. And then you can have a little bit of skin in the game, right? Team starts sucking, whatever. You could sell it. If the team does well, you could sell it, make a little bit of money. And then you have like real ownership. So if the Braves do good, then I feel good. Pirates do good. And then I watch this jerk off take the money and who knows what he's doing with it. And then he's selling the team. Like he's not selling the team, he's selling the best players. And people are still lining up to give him more money. Like it's infuriating how there isn't like an open rebellion in Pittsburgh. I know people don't show up. But that's the kind of thing that the NFL right now, to me, they seem like they're still trying to be elitist. And they're trying to like take over everything. And we'll have Thursday night games. Who cares if there's college games on? Oh, we'll start having random Friday games. Who cares about high school games? And then when people aren't watching, because the people that are diehard football fans are most likely diehard high school fans. Right?
It makes sense.
Because who's filling these stadiums in Texas? Not people that don't like football. They're not 50-year-olds that are hanging under the bleachers, right? Reliving their glory days. Maybe some of them. But I guarantee that's how many viewers they're losing on these Friday night games, because if it becomes a thing, and I know they were looking for partners, so I bring it up. The NFL was looking for partners to bring more Friday night games. And it's like, why? Why? The same thing with like college. They want to talk about, oh, we just want one big super conference. Why? Look what happened with Florida. Getting whooped at Florida State. And they're in a super conference. That opening happens more often than not. Right? For some teams. I'm not calling out those teams specifically. They're just the ones that got whooped early in the year that everyone's laughing about. So you have that type of thing for the NFL right now where, hey, what game are you going to put on Friday night? At best, you only have, 3 or 4 high-powered matchups a week in the NFL. At most. You can pretend and like make up all history and like rivalries for like some of these random games, like Bengals, Browns or something, but like a normal person isn't watching that game. Like they don't care about the rivalry of Ohio. They just don't. Like no one cares about that. It's not like Steelers Ravens or something that's bigger, where a normal person might just kind of tune in, or like Lions Bears, Packers Bears. Like there are some that are kind of bigger just because of the history, but those don't happen every week. So like if I look through, let's bring up the NFL schedule real quick here, because they're trying to have how many games they're selling to media partners. They have Thursday night game, which is already garbage, which proves my point. How is the Friday game going to be any better? They put the best game on this week, Ravens Chiefs on Thursday. Friday's Packers Eagles. That's a pretty good matchup. Then Sunday, I don't know if this is because I'm watching the Steelers, but the Steelers are playing the Falcons. I guess the next big game is Cardinals Bills. Maybe that's okay. I don't know. The big time Fox game looks like it might be Titans and Bears. That's such a random matchup. The Bears were, I guess Caleb Williams maybe, right? What else are they going to try to do? Then the primetime 4 p.m. matchup is either going to be Broncos Seahawks or Cowboys Browns. I guess maybe Raiders Chargers. That might be okay just because the Harbaugh thing. Sunday is Rams Lions, and then Monday is Jets and Niners. So maybe a handful of decent games, but we don't even know how good these teams are because it's still early. So then if you're going to have to spread those out every week, it's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen until you get maybe to the end of the year when you have the conference or division games that they throw in there. That might be enough to draw a casual person in. But even the games that I mentioned, like the traditional 1 p.m. game, if it ends up being Titans and Bears, like who's watching that? You have to be invested in checking out Caleb Williams or fantasy, right? Who's even the Titans coach? Because isn't Vrabel back at like Ohio State doing something?
Yeah.
Like I don't even know what's going on there for that to be must-watch TV for me. The afternoon ones, like I said, maybe. Like I don't care about the Broncos Seahawks. If it ends up being Raiders Chargers, maybe I'll watch to see how Harbaugh does. Cowboys Browns. The Browns are supposed to be hot. People might just hate watch for the Cowboys. That's why I think it's probably going to be that one. Or Bucks Commanders, another check out, see if Jaden Daniels any good. But that's only for fantasy reasons, right? Because would you watch, or heck, would you even DVR a game? Like if it's a Friday night game, what would make you want to like DVR or make it must watch for you?
I think it would just have I did kind of a stupid thing with fantasy this year and just made it more teams that I had a remote interest in watching. Like I know in years past, Arizona was following when Cliff Kingsbury was there. They were incorporating air raid concepts into the NFL that I thought, how are they taking this stuff that's supposed to be so simple and translating it into NFL terminology? Because I feel like the one thing that we complain about, but I think makes sense from the NFL standpoint, is that they use a semi familiar verbiage, so that if a team takes one player, they sign someone from the practice squad or they sign someone from another team, trade, whatever. It's not like there's a big learning curve for them. It's like they can pick up a guy over the weekend and like that week they're playing in the game. I mean, maybe it's not the entire package or the entire series, but like they have enough understanding of what they're supposed to be doing that they can step right out onto the field and be productive. And I think, that's one of the things that would make it stand out, is like Arizona or with the Steelers. If they were playing there, the being local team, that would be something to make me want to dial in. And more so with any of the teams that we end up bringing up on our show here. Looking at like the Raiders, looking at the Chargers now with Harbaugh being back. Like that's going to be a team that we haven't really talked a lot about in the past, but will be highlighted now.
They'll replace Gruden talk. It'll be Harbaugh talk. Or,
yeah.
I mean, we talk about like the Ravens or whatever the Steelers' rivals are. Last year ended up kind of being the Browns. For the same reason, like they had controversy, had some fantasy players on their team. I think I had Cooper and maybe Deshaun Watson. Right? So naturally, it just kind of veers that way, right? Sometimes I don't try to pick. Like I didn't set out to say, you know what, I'm going to talk about the Browns this year on this show. And I'm going to draft their guys. Like, nah, just kind of landed that way. They kind of did it to themselves, right?
And I just, this is kind of nerdy, but this is one of the things I look at too, is like for the teams that consistently sting, what do they do to get themselves out of that hole? Like looking at Detroit, I remember when Campbell got hired and he made the comment about like he wanted guys that were going to bite the kneecaps, and like he was establishing a physical style team. I was like, if they start to win and they buy into this concept of being tough, they're gonna be really competitive. And it's like, I like to see how do they turn it around when they're not winning and they haven't been successful. Because I mean, it's easy to follow. When you're in the 2000s and you're just on board with the New England dynasty of what's already been established. But I like to look at when it's not established, when you're not on top. What does a coach or an organization do to get a team to be competitive?
Well, see, that's my big thing. I think you have to draft players that are all in. Because I brought up, I think I brought it up a couple weeks ago, like Aiden Hutchinson. I think he was a spark plug for both Michigan and then kind of as part of Dan Campbell's turning it around in Detroit. Because he was there in 2021, which was the first year Michigan won the Big Ten, I believe, with Harbaugh. And that was the Aiden Hutchinson year, where I think they lost a game, or maybe it was a COVID year, but they had a players-only meeting. Aiden Hutchinson put it together. And after that meeting is when Michigan went on its tear. Like, no, we're going to start hitting the weight room harder. We're going to be like all in. Everyone's against Michigan, or Michigan versus everybody, whatever. They started like that campaign. Kind of started back then, right? It wasn't like the superficial, what was the one with like Devin Bush when they had the revenge tour? And they were just like making fun of like certain teams. Like Hutchinson kind of turned it internal. And then they weren't really talking trash on teams like they did in the past, and then would end up losing to like Ohio State. And then he went to the Lions. And remember, he wasn't even the number one pick. Because I almost wonder, did Jaguar fans, do they hate that? Because the Lions that year, they were 3-13 and won. They draft Hutchinson. He comes in, focus on the team. He starts getting players to buy into Campbell's aggressive vision. He won that style with Harbaugh in college. Has a lot of other guys. It wasn't just him. They drafted like players guys that year. And that was the year did they bring in Goff like that year? Like they got rid of some of the guys that were just comfortable there. Weren't really pushing to win. Like Stafford. And I'm not calling him out because he went and won a Super Bowl. Right? But he was on a losing team for how many years? So to have that kind of culture shift, I think you need a combination of, you have to cut, I don't want to call it dead weight. Because like Stafford's probably going to be in the Hall of Fame, right? But the guys that have just been getting comfortable. Sometimes it doesn't work though. Like New England, when they let Tom Brady go, and they tried to like, oh, we're going to regroup here. And everyone was laughing, saying like, Tom Brady's a boss, like forget him. And then Tom Brady single-handedly went to the Buccaneers and was like, I'm going to teach you guys how to win. And then they won a Super Bowl. And that flipped the entire convo from Belichick's the man. Everyone had been talking about Belichick and saying like, Brady's not flashy. Brady's not this. Brady's not that. When he leaves New England, he's going to learn a hard lesson, what it's like not playing for a top coach. He wins a Super Bowl. The narrative has changed so much that people are like, is Belichick even good? Right? Can't win at all. So I think you have some of that when you're building a team. Now, the Jets, in contrast, they went the opposite direction. Right? They went in and bought a veteran team. The Lions did it from internal, right?
And I think that's when you look at the two routes, it's almost what I'm seeing with the portal stuff now is that you have to be ultra, like in the NFL, you have to be ultra selective with who you're signing and bringing in free agency, which you look at your top teams, your Chiefs, your Steelers, your Patriots, your 49ers type teams, like they're not going crazy every year when free agency hits. Now, your teams like the Jets, Commanders, like every year, whoever the top free agents are, they're signing them to these max contracts and like blowing their salary cap. And I think they're bringing in the hottest names or the biggest names that they can, but at the end of the day, they're not able to put the team together because they're taking random players and it doesn't necessarily fit within the scheme, the chemistry of the team. And I think it definitely has an effect on their ability to play cohesively. Where you look at these teams that are winning in the NFL, I feel like there's a more consistent flow of how they're assigning players, how they're developing players, where those needs are. And then the benefit is that once you have core spots in position, like you look at the Steelers during Roethlisberger and Polamalu's term, where they were like going deep in the playoffs every year, they had they had the luxury of having those late first round draft picks that they could take flyers on guys and really get a lot of mileage out of them because they already had cemented starters in a lot of key places.
And that's where, like, the Commanders you brought up, they drafted Daniels, and then they drafted Sanders still from Michigan, who's been known to be kind of like a player-type coach. And I wonder, like, trying to get young guys like that, bringing in a guy, making him a starter on defense, saying, like, you're going to kind of be we want you to be a leader on defense. You're young. And then we're also bringing in a rookie quarterback. We want to kind of fix the culture here. Are they going to model it after kind of what the Lions did? I don't know. I'm kind of curious to see. Because if you need to start rebuilding, you need to rebuild. Otherwise, you're going to be in a weird limbo like the Steelers are. It's like, I can't believe people are so excited about the year because they've done nothing to get better. Right?
Yeah.
It's like you said, you're just signing vets that nobody wants. How is that a recipe for success? Like, can you point at one other team in history that had mediocre quarterbacks brought in that turned the year around? Like, I get acting like Russell Wilson is Tom Brady in my example. But Tom Brady, people were talking trash on him saying like he couldn't win, do all this stuff. And he has a competitive fire. I haven't seen that competitive fire from Russell Wilson in like a decade since he won that Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So that's two totally different dudes. Now maybe he turns it on after this like quarterback battle with Fields, but I'm not expecting it. And I don't even know that. I guess the Bucs didn't really have. They had some weapons for Tom Brady. I think Mike Evans and Godwin were a pretty good wide receiver duo. Steelers don't have that right now. And he brought friends with him. Gronk. Like, Russell didn't bring anyone with him. Could you imagine if he brought like DK Metcalf? Like, then people could be excited, right? Because that's what Aaron Rodgers tried to do with the Jets. Let me bring a bunch of my friends, and then he gets hurt, and that's the issue when you're throwing. Hey, we're gonna bring in a Hall of Fame quarterback, and see if it works out. Like it worked out for the Rams. They brought in Stafford. They said, hey, we already have the culture. All you have to do is legit come in and don't blow it. And didn't he almost blow with that fumble?
He was close.
So like it's like, all right, how close can you get? And then that's it. He's still playing, I think. So I wouldn't expect them to win a Super Bowl this year. Who knows? I am curious to kind of see how they're going to do because they brought in Blake Corum. And Blake Corum for Michigan, a lot of people haven't. I mean, he was like the best running back in the country. So I think a lot of people know who he is. But some of his jump cuts, dude, are like Barry Sanders like. He just didn't have like the top end speed.
Easy.
Did you see the Rose Bowl run, my man? Those are Bama guys couldn't bring him down.
Look, you're comparing that. Barry Sanders is on a whole nother level.
I just said the jump cut. I didn't say he was like Barry Sanders of whatever. I just said he had a jump cut like Barry. There's probably not too many guys that make cuts like that. Reggie Bush, maybe. It's hard to find a guy that can make that type of cut.
Yeah.
And so they're saying that the Rams, their guy that they were going to have starting running back, I don't know if you saw this, but fantasy owners are like kind of scared because the Rams announced that he's going to start returning kicks. Is it the Williams? And someone posted, there's never been a starting running back in the history of the NFL that was a kick returner. They're like, dude, start bidding on Blake Corum right now if he's in your league, because there's no way that they went to camp and when they asked the coach, they're like, why did you make your starting running back the kick returner? And he said flat out, we want to make sure he gets more touches in the game, which makes me think that Blake's going to be getting some touches, which he's already taken in our league. I ran out of money to try to get him. So for people that are looking for fantasy, I always find weird articles like that that get sent to me. So that's one to keep an eye out. Why did the Rams make their starting running back the kick returner if they weren't planning on having Blake get some heavy touches, right? Because you're not going to risk your starting dude getting injured for no reason in the NFL. Are they even returning kicks that far? Did the weird new kickoff? They just decided. They're like, nah, we need to get you some more touches. Kick return sounds all right. It's like, coach, what can I do to not lose my career? He's like, start returning kicks. He's like, all right, I guess I'll try it. See what happens. So keep an eye out there. Because I did miss that watching college football. I was like, man, too bad we didn't have Blake making that cut. He would have made it through that hole. So that's one of the things that I think when you have a guy like that and he's been there for a while and then he is gone, you kind of miss that. You're like, God dang, I didn't realize how reliable that his cut was. If only he had, he's small too. How tall was Barry? Blake's like 5'8" or something. I feel like Barry had to be taller than that. And Barry was fast. I don't think Blake has top end speed, but I guess you really don't need a fast running back in the NFL these days, right? Was Le'Veon Bell fast?
Bell was he had really great vision.
That's what Blake has. That's kind of what I'm thinking. Where if he can just get the ball.
It was kind of weird watching Bell because He ran the zone scheme so well, and it was like you would watch it. It was like, what is he doing? It's so slow developing, but then he just got vertical so fast, and he gashed defenses until he decided that he needed to hold out for more money.
And then, yeah, then it ruined his thing because you have to have a system that fits you. That's what I'm wondering for. Because, yeah, I looked it up to see if they're not sure how many carries Blake's going to get, but they did announce that Kyron Williams and him are going to be sharing the duties. And like I said, they made Kyron Williams the kick returner, which you just don't randomly do. Right? It's not like college where you're like, well, we really stink, so we better get our best guys on the field and hope that they're returning punts or kicks or I guess the Bears had that with Devin Hester. They're like, that's the only way we can score the ball is if he brings some magic to the table. Right? So I don't know. That's my fantasy tidbit. Keep an eye on my man Blake. Hopefully he does good in the NFL. NFL chews through so many running backs that it's like you don't know how long someone's going to last. I mean, McCaffrey faked injuries for years with the Panthers. And now people are still drafting him number 1 in fantasy. And I thought it only takes a minute. But the Niners ruined my fantasy bid anyway because they signed Ayuk back. They were supposed to trade him to the Steelers. I put it in our fantasy draft chat. What are they thinking? They want to win the Super Bowl.
That's right.
Right? I brought back Kittle because I thought for sure they're going to get rid of Ayuk. And I thought, well, his value's going to go through the roof. Nope, I'm not starting off good this year. I'm going to have to hit on some sleepers. I have to keep reading articles about players that are getting named to the kick return. Right?
Well, and that was one of the reasons why I ended up spending a little more on Ayuk because I was like, could he be partnering up with George Pickens and Russell Wilson? That might be a win.
No. And then he just got a fat contract, so he's not going to have a good year. How many guys have a great contract and then have a great year?
Well, my hope
None.
my hope is that there's going to be injuries and that are going to force the ball to him.
Well, hopefully not Kittle, my man. Although I did outbid you for that Cardinals guy because I knew you wanted them. Then I looked at his stat line and I thought, why am I playing 2 tight ends? And then the Chiefs brought back Juju, which, bro, I already bid on Xavier Worthy. What are you doing? You don't need Juju. Stop it. Throw to Worthy. So I'm a little concerned at the start of the year. None of my guesses hit. None of them. That's what I get.
Well, and I was really worried last week because you started bringing up about Gardner Minshew, and I was like, that was the one guy that I wanted to try to lock up in the draft, and then there he was just waiting to be picked. I was like, this is the perfect setup because I think if they do allow him to throw those higher percentage quick passes, that he could have a really good year.
Oh, bro, they have great weapons on that team. Even without, they don't have Waller anymore, right?
No, he just retired. He got a divorce and was like, I'm done.
And they did lose Josh Jacobs, though, to the Packers, which is kind of like, eh.
That hurt, but Zamir White had picked up the slack toward the end of last year.
Oh, yeah, he did. That was one of my fancy guys. Zamir. That's why you have to pick. You have to keep an eye out who you think is going to get injured. I didn't think Josh Jacobs was going to get injured. But then I knew I had to handcuff him or whatever with Zamir White whenever it went down. I think I had him bid all my money in the free agency. And then I stuck with him because, like, who else am I going to play? Eckler? That's what I don't understand with the Commanders. Like, hey, let's start young. Let's get some locker room guys like Mike Sanderstill, which everyone loves, and Jaden Daniels, who was a great guy for LSU. Oh, let's bring in Austin Eckler. Seems like he's on a downturn. Yeah, let's get him. Why? Why? What are you doing? Jim Harbaugh comes in. his focus is running the ball. And he's like, nah, I don't like this guy. And the Commanders think that's the guy we need. I would love to have been there for that convo. Like if he was a known winner, or if he was a guy that was like, I mean, I guess he was leading in fantasy 2 years ago. So maybe you bid on that just because you're like, all right, let's see if he can get us to that next level. But I'm not sure. Those are my thoughts going into the open week. Anything else for the NFL you want to talk about?
No.
I want to make sure we have time. You want to go first? Or you want me to go first?
Yeah, I'll rip it. Last night was an absolute train wreck again for Florida State. One of the things that I've picked up over the years is that I feel like you see the most progress in teams between week 1 and week 2, just because there's so many unknown variables with how the team's going to play in week 0 or week 1, depending on how you look at it. And to get those, it's hard to simulate live game reps because you're doing all the scrimmages, you're doing all the in-game preparation, but till you actually go live against somebody else, like it's really hard to get that true feeling. So I looked at it like, you know, there were a lot of built-in excuses for the Georgia Tech game, in my opinion. I mean, playing overseas and just with it being earlier in the year, benefit of the doubt. But in the back of my mind, there were still some glaring issues because there were still some question marks with the offensive line. There was still a lot of potential issues with the linebackers that I thought, can the additions of Marvin Jones Jr. with Patrick Payton staying another year, like, can they fill part of that gap that Fisk and Verse left? You know, the secondary is still pretty solid, but it's like the linebacking core just is really in a rough place right now. And, you know, not putting all the pressure on the defense, but offensively with bringing DJ in, I thought, here's a guy that, you know, last year we looked at Jordan Travis and he was a lighter quarterback. I thought maybe there's going to be some issues with like Travis not wanting to run and then inevitably getting the injury on a quarterback run, that you're bringing in a guy that's 250 pounds. Like, maybe he's going to have more physicality in the run game, that he would be able to shoulder more. He wouldn't necessarily have to do as much throwing. And they just miss so many wide open opportunities. Like, they're getting guys open. You can see the scheming. Like, they had before the half, they ran a little snag corner and they just overthrew him in the back of the end zone. It's like, what the hell are you doing? Like, there's nobody around him. Like, give him a chance to make a play. And I feel like, you know, they pissed that opportunity away. They had a bunch of really dumb penalties that were uncharacteristic. You know, it kind of feels like, you know, they're trying to turn the corner through the portal, but it just seems like right now there's some disconnect on the roster because it just doesn't feel like the same level of cohesion that I saw last year or even the year prior. And, you know, is it an anomaly that maybe with O'Brien playing at Boston College and with the physical play, I mean, Georgia Tech had one of the best offenses in the ACC a year ago. Like, is it just that they're playing teams that are much improved, who have perennially been doormat teams? Possibly, but I mean, that's why I don't want to judge too quickly on how the rest of this game was played, because when you start looking at the rest of the year, like, there's growth opportunity. The big plays are potentially there. The athletes are there, but they have to capitalize on it. They can't be making the stupid decisions that they were making that give up easy points. You can't turn the ball over 100 times and expect to be competitive.
That's where I see a lot of people ripping on Florida State because of the transfers. But then the same people are praising Miami because Cam Ward came in and he's been on fire. I mean, they played Florida, which I said we'd talk about. Florida's downfall is ridiculous. And I don't understand how they're so bad. And it's like...
I can tell you, I think maybe you're too far removed from the Brady Hoke years.
Well, hey, I always kind of judge everyone by Brady Hoke because, like, now I'm back in it with a new coach at Michigan, and I don't know what the expectations are going to be. Michigan played Fresno State, ended up winning by like 20. I saw a lot of like predictions where they're like, well, Michigan should win by 40. And I'm like, Fresno State's usually pretty good. We're not playing Idaho. Win by 40. I thought the final score would be like 24-10. And until the final pick six, the score was like 23-10. And I thought, just where I kind of thought it was going to be. But like Florida was playing Miami, you would think that Brady Hoke had Michigan kind of play up against Ohio State and teams like that. The only one that I don't think there was that one year Notre Dame killed us. And then there was the Alabama game, which was the real eye opener. That's kind of where it feels like that Florida's at right now, where Brady Hoke came in, they had a great year, and then they got stomped by Alabama in the opener, and people were like, well, we thought the team was on the upswing. And then they kind of meandered around, and then they got killed by like Notre Dame the next year or 2 years from then, and it was like, this is all downhill. Like there was no saving the program. You had to make a change. And I mean, you could say the same thing with like Brian Kelly, because I honestly wouldn't even have minded if Michigan had brought in Brian Kelly. Just because I think with the NIL era, he's weird enough to do the NIL type stuff. But then they play USC. Like, you can't knock USC for finally looking like a decent team. When you scheduled that game, like, what were you thinking? USC has no defense. We can run all over them.
They were like, thank God we're not losing to Florida State again.
I know he lost, like every opener he's lost. 2 to Florida State and then 1 to the USC. So do you knock LSU for playing those big openers? Like, does it hurt you in the 12-team playoff? Not really. That's why I think a lot of people weren't really ready to write off Florida State after the Georgia Tech loss because, like even I brought up, Ohio State's lost championship, they lost to Virginia Tech. So like losing to a weird ACC team shouldn't have been the end of the world, but now you've given every other team a 2-game lead on you.
But I think the more I've was thinking about this, because even last week, like it was obnoxious because I knew going in that you're like, for all the frustration of the way that last season ended with not getting into the playoffs, it was like this is the redemption tour that like really come out swinging and just completely fell flat. It was like, son of a gun. And you think, well, if that's the only loss of the year, and who knows, maybe you play Georgia Tech again for the championship. Like maybe that's just how the season's going to play out. Like you just don't know. Like maybe there's some truth to that. And then you follow it up with this. Like it's still in that same frame of mind of, okay, if you lose these two, but then convincingly you're blowing teams out by the end of the year, I think in this bigger playoff expanded format, it may be easier to overlook even 2 losses at this point because it was close. Like there were teams that were in that argument over the last couple of years of, well, how do you leave this team out? You know, I think it's plausible, but they would have to basically go on like an Urban Meyer rampage of just blowing teams out by like 70, 80 points
to make a chance. Well, the main thing for Florida State, though, they'd have to win the ACC, I think, to get in. And that's what's going to hold them back. Because I don't think that even if they do tear everyone up If they don't win the ACC, I think it's going to be hard for them to get in, and the only reason is Notre Dame. Notre Dame's schedule is Charmin soft, and the fact that they ranked them at 5 is unbelievable to me. Because they didn't look like the 5th best team. A&M didn't look like a top 10 team or anywhere near that. So Notre Dame getting them, I was surprised that they got that big of a jump. Because it's kind of like fool's gold, where right now, if Michigan were to make the playoffs out of all the teams in the top 10, I would want to play Notre Dame. Their only big plays were like what, runs? Okay, Michigan can easily shut down the run game. Fresno State had like 20 yards rushing. So like it was a good first test. I was surprised how well coached Fresno State was, because I know they had a new coach, and I guess he played there before. So like seeing that come out, and then watching Notre Dame squeak one out over a first-year coach, really, right? Because they only pulled away near the end with the long touchdown run. And by that time, A&M's defense was gassed. I wouldn't think like I would be super high on Notre Dame. And then Oregon almost lost to Idaho. I don't know if you watch any of that game. But I'm watching a game, and I think it might have been the game after, whatever the nightcap was. But the ESPN guy, I forget who it was like, oh, if you watch, they're like, how was that how was that Oregon game so close with Idaho? And the guy said, well, if you watched the game, you'd be wondering the same thing, because Oregon looked like the way better team. And I was like, did they? Oregon had to go for it on 4th and 7 to get their last touchdown. If they didn't get that, Idaho was driving to win with the end of the game. Like they had to convert a 4th and 7. That's like really crazy to me, because Idaho's an FCS program. So the entire time I'm watching this, I thought, well, here we go. The Big Ten's going to be just Ohio State again versus Penn State and Michigan. If Michigan turns it around, like I don't know how good Michigan is right now. But I thought Oregon's going to be fool's gold. They're going to be the new Nebraska, where they come in hype and then they're like losing these weird games. Because now Nebraska has to play Colorado. And I don't know, did I talk about Matt Rule last week? Dude, I've been watching tons of interviews.
You did, but I am surprised. That was a good call.
What?
Idaho being FCS.
Oh, you didn't know that?
I thought they were still FBS. I didn't realize they dropped down a level.
Nah, dude. I thought Oregon was like supposed to beat them by 70. Kind of like what Missouri beat their FCS opponent by like 50 points, and they jumped Michigan in the polls. And I thought, why? Like, in no world should a team be rewarded with playing an FCS school. If Michigan would have won on a game-winning field goal, okay, whatever, drop them. Like, but you're rewarding a team for playing FCS. Michigan played a traditionally good Mountain West team, I think is where Fresno State is. And they've had top picks in the NFL draft, so it's not like they don't get talent. And they won by like 20. Like, in what world would beating an FCS opponent be a better resume builder? Not that I care, because they're playing Texas this week, and that's if Michigan beats Texas, who knows how high they'll put Michigan. Because right now the knock seems to be, whoa, Michigan's offense might stink. And I thought they came out, and that was like Jim Harbaugh was still coaching the team. It was kind of weird, right? When he left to go to the NFL at Stanford, Shaw took over, and they still ran a pro-style offense, but it was a little bit different, right? You could tell that Harbaugh wasn't there. The game on Saturday for Michigan, I thought, what the hell are they running? The only new plays that I saw were like some weird screens that weren't even good, and I don't even think any of the screens worked, because they were kind of like the flare screens, right? Where like Donovan Edwards would kind of flare out of the backfield, and they never work. Like, I would rather them just bring back the Rich Rod, like almost like a slant type screen where you're like moving upfield. I don't know if that's called bubble screens or whatever. Like whatever he was doing to like get the offense moving as like in lieu of like a run play, let Donovan Edwards do that. He's the running back. I knew when they said that he bulked up that was going to be bad for his style because his best run was kind of like a Le'Veon Bell where he like hesitated and then burst through the hole for like 10 yards. And they did that play once. Like he's better if they run like a stretch concept. If Donovan Edwards was at Iowa, I can only imagine how good his stats would have been because he's so fast. And I mean, that's how he beat Ohio State that one year, running like a stretch or whatever through the line and then outrunning everybody. He scored on Washington because like he ran into the line. His vision's not that good, so he ran right into the line. And then it was almost like a delay. And he was able to bounce it and they couldn't catch him. And then Michigan had like none of that for him. And it was kind of disappointing. But the quarterback play, I'm a little shocked, especially because a lot of it's coming from like the media and like teams that are really in there. And they're comparing the new guy, Davis Warren, to JJ. And I don't want to feel like I'm bitter on JJ, but JJ made a lot of stupid throws. Right? I don't think anyone can deny that. Do you remember the first throw in the Rose Bowl? He threw an interception when the other guy was wide open. Davis Warren on Saturday made no dumb throws. I rewatched every throw because I thought, actually there might have been one that he threw in the double coverage. It was like a fade that I thought, well, he probably shouldn't have threw that. The interception, I mean, honestly, it's scary for Michigan because they have like none of the receivers took that jump from like the year to the next year. That ball should have that receiver should have easily jumped for that ball and it probably would have been knocked away, but it shouldn't have been an interception. He underthrew it, but at least he made the read and saw that he was open and he just looked like he didn't step into the throw all the way. People were saying that he was missing guys that were wide open. I think the two plays that I saw that people were wide open, they were almost like an a-la blitz, and he was making the throw as he was dropping back. He didn't get hit, which is a good move from a quarterback, and he threw it to a guy that was semi-open or threw it away. One of them he just kind of threw away. So I didn't see any bad throws from him. I'm kind of shocked from people being so negative against him. I think a lot of it has to do with him not being a highly ranked recruit. And I almost wonder, do people not realize that he had cancer? Because Michigan's quarterback this year, he was a walk-on because he got leukemia, I think. And then his senior year, so he got healthy and he was supposed to play his senior year. And then it got canceled because of COVID. So he had no footage. I guess he performed well at camps because some of the things I remember reading on him when Harbaugh took him were like, no, he could probably be a high-ranked recruit. We just don't know because he never ended up getting to play because he got sick. He waited behind JJ. He's a senior this year, which I didn't even realize. So honestly, it's like, would you take a guy that's been in your program, comes in his first game, he doesn't really make any bad reads. People were saying that he's staring receivers down. I didn't see it personally. I tried to look for that on the film because he's hitting guys that are open. And I don't think it's all coaching because some of the plays that they were calling were just dumb. And I thought these are just like, like it almost felt like, all right, you can tell that Harbaugh's his input's kind of gone because some of the concepts when Harbaugh was there, you could tell like from an NFL thing that they would build on each other. Right? Sometimes he would be running this one play and you're like, this is the dumbest play. He's running it 3 times and then he would run like a play action off it and the guy would be wide open. And it wasn't like a Sherrone Moore thing. He was doing that with Pep Hamilton way before. And it was kind of like the same thing where if you go back and watch Ohio State, Michigan had wide receivers that were running open in 2021 in Ohio Stadium. Like Cornelius Johnson, I think he ran a post or something and then I think the tight end got out. Where Michigan had a couple of plays like that it seemed like they could have ran against Fresno, and maybe they're saving them for Texas. That's something Harbaugh started to do late in his career at Michigan, where he would the game on Saturday was like a late, these past 3 years Michigan game. where he said, I'm not going to put anything on film. We don't need to. We're going to just do all safe underneath throws, and we're going to do that. And if people call me a liar or whatever, look at UNLV last year from JJ. JJ had like 2 or 3 interceptions in that game. Why? Because he was making poor reads against UNLV. Like, that's like his only interceptions on the year. And then people were saying, remember late in the year, everyone was like blaming Connor about how Michigan wasn't throwing the ball. And they said like JJ got a little banged up. Maybe they just didn't trust JJ. Right? I'm not saying the new guy didn't come in and like didn't throw for 300 yards or whatever, because obviously he didn't. They didn't throw that much in this past weekend. But I'm a little disappointed in Michigan fans. Maybe it's like the rose-colored glasses, but don't knock a guy that's never started before. And you want the big guy to come in. And I think a lot of it's just because a lot of the insiders have been hyping up Orji. We've seen Orji play last year. He's big. They're hoping he was going to be like Cam Newton. He threw the first touchdown pass to Donovan Edwards on like an option. He's not afraid to run the ball. And I saw a lot of media complaining about how they used him. But I thought they used him pretty effectively. Because when it was like a short run game, why, if you know you're just going to run like on second and short, why not put him in and run an option read? Because he was gashing him. And then he did roll out the throw, and I thought, oh, here we go. Is he like Cam Newton? And he turfed it right in the ground, dude. Like 5 feet in front of him. And I thought, damn, we got Tebow instead. Got Tebowed. Which isn't even a bad thing. Michigan could use, I mean, this same setup won a national championship with Florida. You have Chris Leak as Davis Warren, the more traditional quarterback that's playing most of the game. If he's having trouble like reading or making plays with his feet down at the goal line, put in your Tebow or your Orji. You know he can score the ball. He's thrown it near the goal line. He already threw for a touchdown near the goal line. He can run, and he's not afraid to pull it. Because that's the only one bad thing that I saw from Davis Warren. I think it was like a 3rd and 1 or something, and it was a read up the middle, and no one waited on him. And he handed it off. Like, he didn't even try to hold to see if he could pull it, which makes me think coach told him that's just like the run play like Harbaugh used to do. Like, JJ, you're not running it, so don't even think about it. But I thought, what if he pulled it and ran for the first down? Like, what's the worst thing that can happen to him? Coach benches him? Maybe. But if Orji's throwing the ball 5 foot into the dirt, then no, they're not going to bench him. Because I don't know what Michigan fans want, to be honest. You won the national championship. The only way you would have really got a portal quarterback would have been Milroe. He's the only one that was available after Harbaugh and JJ decided to go to the NFL. And the only reason he was available is because Nick Saban retired. That's it. So that's my take on the games. We'll see if Michigan can win this Saturday. Did Sharon Moore learn from Harbaugh these last couple of years to not show anything when you don't have to? Because, yeah, what if Michigan would have won by 40 points? Like, what would that have done? Nothing? There was one other throw where Warren hit a guy down the sideline and the receiver just stopped running. So I am concerned about the receivers. I saw some really poor receiving play. There were like 5 or 6 drops that if they don't drop those balls or the guy doesn't stop running or heck, the receiver even just not breaks up the interception, I think people's perception of him is totally different. I do like our other running back, though, Mullins. He's like a big Hassan Haskins like bruiser. And Texas is supposed to have a weak D-line, so we'll see how this week goes. If we can just pound them like Boston College pounded Florida State, I'll feel a lot better. If we can't run the ball, though, we'll be like in a world of hurt. That's what people were saying. Michigan's AD sucks so bad, dude. He should have known Florida State was going to have a bad run D. Could you imagine if we were playing Florida State this week instead of Texas? Although Florida State's not ranked anymore, so it wouldn't have gave us a bump. They would have dropped us both in the polls, dude. They're like, Harbaugh's gone? We got to drop Michigan down to 15. Put Notre Dame in the top 5? Like, we don't want them winning. I can just imagine all the voters crying, like tears in their eyes, voting Michigan down. Like, yeah, get out of here, you cheaters. I saw Game Day like made a couple of sign stealing jokes and like no one laughed. And I thought, how many times are they going to do this? Because they're coming to Michigan campus next week. So if no one reacts to the sign stealing stuff, are they just eventually going to drop it? Because I think even the Dr. Pepper ad had a couple things on it, and I thought that was just such an awkward sign stealing joke that it's like weird. Because now not only can you have a helmet, Matt, you can actually watch the game tablet on the sideline. Did you see that? I didn't know they were doing that. So there's like literally no reason to steal signs. One of the coaches that they interviewed was like, if you're getting your sign stolen, you're an idiot. Like you could just huddle up. Like, what are you talking about? Now we have helmet comms. Like people bringing it up is just insane to him. I forget which coach it was. And it made me laugh. But I am glad Bill O'Brien did not go to Ohio State. Oh my God. Bill O'Brien, I know a lot of people hate him for whatever reason. He won at Penn State during their heaviest sanctions. He has a winning record, even though it's slightly a winning record, in the NFL. Nick Saban has a losing record in the NFL. So don't be mad that Florida State lost to Boston College, because Bill O'Brien, he could get them rolling fast. And then I'm worried that he'll end up in the Big Ten again. Or like, who knows? Like if the Boar flames out at Alabama, if they bring in Bill O'Brien as like a pro type coach, like they would just keep rolling. Because I think some of his concepts and stuff that he brought in that I remember from like that heavy run Penn State offense. So Penn State, they were able to stay relevant because they ran that heavy run offense with Bill O'Brien.
Yeah.
Because they had the dogs to do it. When they played West Virginia was so small compared to Penn State on Saturday. I was kind of shocked. And then I watched West Virginia's coach run like 3 or 4 third and short, fourth and shorts right into the middle of the line. And I thought, this guy's an idiot. Can he not see that it looks like a bunch of middle schoolers running up against the varsity squad? Like JV varsity at practice? Why is he doing this? And he had some guys with speed. Heck, their stud running back like broke his collarbone. I don't know if that was confirmed. Just trying to block one of Penn State's dudes because he's like a house. And that's where I was just like, oh my God, no wonder Bill O'Brien had it easy there. Boston College, he doesn't have that talent, and he still had Boston College running hard. I'm not saying they're going to be like a 10-win team this year, but I think the dude can coach. And Chip Kelly seemed like his career trajectory was like in a different direction, going down. So if I had to pick who I would want my rival to have as their coach, Chip Kelly is definitely the pick. I would not want them to have Bill O'Brien. Could you imagine an Ohio State powered line? Heck, Michigan, when Ohio State went power last year, Michigan didn't stop. They went for a touchdown, and they were like, that's it. We're not going to run that anymore. Which still baffles me from like Ryan Day. Like they knew they could have just turned on the power. Michigan was getting tired last year, and they could have just ran it down our throat. But after they got a touchdown, they went back to their dink and dunk offense, and then luckily he threw an interception. Which McCord did have a good game too. And Ohio State's quarterback, his stats were, I mean, they threw for more yards, but he was like 11 for 25 or something. Like he wasn't that much more accurate than what Michigan's was. And I think Michigan had a lot of drops. Like I said, I didn't see a lot of drops from Ohio State. I just don't think their new quarterback is accurate. And I think that's going to be the decision that comes back to haunt them. With all their talent, they could easily win the Big Ten. But you can't have a guy that's that inaccurate and play Georgia, or you're going to get pounded like Clemson did. That's my final thought from the weekend. I know I kind of went random there. Anything you want to add?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. I just feel like if you can find a level of consistency within your team, it seems like long term there is a lot of success to be had. But you have to have the right pieces, and I feel like even more so now with college, if you can get yourself a consistent quarterback play, you're leaps and bounds ahead of the competition.
That's where, because I think it has to do with like the power run too, that if you have the guys and you're able to just kind of run them, right? That's where I think you can kind of just push that quarterback development into a little bit more of a consistent, hey, let's develop in our own program, compared to having to bring a guy in like Miami, almost like a mercenary. Because everyone was trying to get on him. I think Miami stole him from Ohio State, which thank God. Could you imagine? They had Cam Ward. But you also can develop inside. And that's where it's like Michigan didn't bring in any they tried it with Shea Patterson, it didn't work out. JJ was internally developed. Now Davis Moore, and it's like, just give it a shot. Why does everyone have to just get the shiniest new thing? I watched NC State's transfer quarterback struggle. It seemed like every team had a new quarterback that was just going through and struggling the opening weekend. Like, that was it. Like, I'm better with Michigan taking other transfers. Because, like, what was it? Josiah Stewart I brought up before. He had the big stop to win the Rose Bowl. Dude, he came in for Michigan this weekend. And it was clear that they were like, we have to focus on Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant because they're gigantic playing together, and Michigan's 4-3. He had like so many sacks and stuff that I thought, oh my gosh, Stewart's going to be a beast again. And that was a transfer guy. And he's one of the ones that they brought up when they were like, no, transfers don't really make an impact. I remember one of the articles, it was like, transfers don't really make an impact, so look for him to be more of a thing. We're not going to adjust our blue chip ratio or whatever. It's like, all right, buddy, I'll take the national championship over your like little stats that you're doing over there. Right? Like, I don't care. Keep underrating Michigan's dudes that they're bringing in, because I would rather have a transfer defensive end that's actually getting sacks in a game than a quarterback from like Northwestern Florida Atlantic or something like that, where it's like, hey, he's coming in, but he was a starter there. He's coming in, he's looking underwhelmed. Because that's against NC State had some guy, I forget where he's from, Coastal Carolina maybe, that looked like he was he couldn't process it fast enough. Maybe it takes a while for him to catch up, but I think for every Jordan Travis and Cam Ward, I think a lot of these transfers are just going to be busts, unless it's like a Syracuse getting Kyle McCord and is able to win with him because Ohio State just thought that they could find someone better. That's my final thought. Like, teams are going to bring in guys. You got to make a decision. Just do it in-house and take transfers to plug holes like Michigan's been doing. But if you're trying to bring in a whole offense and stuff, it's going to take a while for it to gel. But we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Texas will kill Michigan this weekend, and then Sherrone Moore will start his Brady Hoke years. See what happens. But thanks for listening. Excited for some more football. If there's anything you want us to talk about, let us know, and we will see you next week.